Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio, Story 22.
Imagine funding a highly competitive commodity trading startup,
Mm,
but you're using century-old makeup money.
right, which is just wild to even think about.
It really is. And, imagine the founder of this startup is a man so chronically, just pathologically lazy that his primary living arrangement involves sleeping under a rough, fibrous blanket that's actually meant for a cow.
Yeah, a literal cow blanket. It's a premise that defies absolutely every modern principle of hustle culture or meritocracy or really just basic business logic.
We are jumping into a classic, deeply strange, and wonderfully complex tale titled Wang Cheng.
And this comes to us from the legendary text Liao Caizi, which translates to strange stories from a Chinese studio.
Whether you're an entrepreneur trying to, time a volatile market, or someone navigating the psychological wave of massive career failure, or just a curious mind trying to understand how the world rewards effort, we actually have a mission today.
We do. Our mission is to decode a paradox. We're going to explore a story about an impossibly lazy man, a hundred-year-old fox spirit, disastrous market timing, catastrophic weather events, and high-stakes underground quail fighting.
Yeah, quail fighting. You heard that right.
Exactly. And we need to understand how a narrative that seems on its surface to be entirely about magic and blind luck is actually this profound, razor-sharp commentary on risk, human nature, and the incredibly unpredictable mechanisms of wealth generation.
Right, we're asking a universally relevant question here. Does our core character define our ultimate fate, or are we just entirely at the mercy of timing, circumstance, and, well, luck?
It's the ultimate debate.
It is. So let's set the stage. We have to introduce you to our main character, Wang Sheng, and really look at the context of his absolute ruin. So Wang is a descendant of a once noble, highly respected family in the Pingwan region.
And his grandfather, a man named Wang Jianzi, held the official title of Yibin.
Right, and we need to unpack that.
Yeah, because to understand the psychological weight on our protagonist, we really need to understand what being an Ibn meant historically. I mean, this wasn't just a casual honorific or some mid-level bureaucratic post.
No, not at all.
The title essentially designates an honored guest, often a son-in-law or a deeply trusted associate, connected directly to a royal prince's mansion, in this case, the Heng Prince.
Okay, so we aren't just talking about a family that did well in local business or something. We are talking about aristocratic proximity, like proximity to the crown itself.
Precisely. In the socio-political architecture of that time, proximity to a prince meant access to immense systemic generational wealth. It meant massive estates, political leverage, and a level of social insulation that, frankly, most commoners couldn't even fathom. The grandfather moved in a world of absolute elite privilege.
But then we cut to the grandson, right, to Wang Cheng, and the contrast is viscerally jarring. I mean, he is utterly destitute.
Utterly.
The text paints this bleak, almost suffocating picture of his daily life. He and his wife are living in just a few broken, crumbling rooms. And my God, the detail about their bedding, they are sleeping in what the text literally calls cattle garments.
Yeah, the cattle garment detail is such a stark, textured image.
It really paints a picture.
It does. For context, we're talking about rough, tightly woven hemp or fibrous coverings that farmers literally used to drape over livestock to keep them from freezing to death in the winter.
Wow.
Yeah, Wang Cheng and his wife aren't even using human textiles. That is the level of absolute material poverty we are dealing with here.
It's total degradation. And they're just constantly arguing, exchanging these bitter, exhausting words about their poverty. But the defining characteristic of Wang Cheng, the mechanism that is actually driving this poverty, is his lethargy.
Right, his laziness.
Yeah, he is described as having a nature that is most lazy. His livelihood is declining daily simply because he refuses to participate in it.
He is effectively paralyzed. I mean, he produces nothing. He attempts nothing.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it is so incredibly easy to look at Wang and just see the ultimate archetype of squandered generational wealth, right?
Absolutely.
He looks like the classic trust fund kid who let the family empire crumble into dust out of pure incompetence. But I want to challenge that reading for a second, and I want you, the listener, to think about this too.
It's a good point to raise.
Is Wang really just hopelessly biologically lazy? Or is he entirely paralyzed by the sheer psychological weight of his family's past?
That's the real question.
Right. Because think about it. Imagine knowing your grandfather walked the marble halls of the prince's mansion, making decisions that shaped provinces, and you were literally sleeping under a cow's blanket.
Yeah, the contrast is unbearable.
Exactly. The shame of that fall from grace, the realization of how far the bloodline has plummeted, it could easily manifest as this extreme, debilitating avoidance. It's easier to do nothing and be cold and lazy than to try to rebuild an empire and fail.
That is a very astute psychological diagnosis, actually. Avoidance is a highly common trauma response to unmeetable expectations.
Right?
If the gap between where you are and where you are supposedly meant to be is too vast, the brain often just shuts down the engine.
It just quits.
Exactly. But what's fascinating here is how the author uses his physical laziness to set up an unexpected moral test.
Oh, this part is brilliant.
Because the inciting incident arrives on a sweltering, intensely hot summer day. Wang is so lethargic, so desperate to avoid his reality and his arguing wife, that he wanders out to the ruined pavilion of the abandoned zoo family garden.
Just looking for a place to nap.
Right. And he falls asleep in the shade. And he sleeps straight through the morning until the sun is 3 poles high.
Which means it's late.
Very late.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else who was resting in the garden has already gotten up, gone to work, and left.
He is the absolute last person to rise, the ultimate late sleeper. But when he finally wakes up, stretching and shuffling through the overgrown grass, he spots something catching the sun.
Yeah.
It's a single golden hairpin. He picks it up, turns it over, and engraved on it in very fine, deliberate characters are the words Yibin Fuji, which means made by the Yibin mansion.
His grandfather's mansion.
Yes.
It's a literal relic of his own family's lost empire, suddenly manifesting right there in the dirt.
And he immediately recognizes the craftsmanship. He knows this is a legacy item from his own bloodline, so he's standing there holding a piece of solid gold that could feed him and his wife for months.
Months and months.
But suddenly, an old woman appears in the garden, frantically stitching the grass, clearly distressed about having lost this exact hairpin.
Now consider the mechanics of the situation here. Wang is starving. He is sleeping in a broken ruin. He holds a piece of gold that technically bears his own family's name.
Right, it has his name on it.
Exactly. So by all logical laws of survival, he should pocket it.
But he doesn't. When the old woman arrives, the text tells us something critical about Wang. Despite his overwhelming poverty, his nature is Jai, meaning honest, upright, and fiercely principled.
Yes.
He doesn't hesitate. He steps forward and hands the golden hairpin right back to her.
And that single, seemingly irrational act of honesty is the fulcrum upon which his entire destiny pivots.
It really is.
The old woman is overjoyed. She praises his high moral character. And to make conversation, she explains that the hairpin is a precious relic from her late husband.
And this is where it gets crazy.
Right. When Wang politely asks who her husband was, she drops a bombshell. She says, the former Yibin, Wang Jianzi.
Wang's jaw hits the floor. He says, "That's my grandfather. How are we meeting? You're an old woman, and he's been dead for decades."
And the old woman is equally shocked to realize who he is. She then reveals her true identity. She is not a human woman at all. She is a fox spirit.
Let's pause here, because for our listeners who might not be steeped in 17th century Chinese folklore, a fox spirit, a hulijing, isn't just a talking animal.
No, not at all.
These are immensely powerful beings, right?
Exactly. In this literary tradition, foxes that live for centuries can cultivate qi, the vital life force, to essentially achieve supernatural powers and take human form.
Wow.
Yeah, and they often intermingle with human society. A century ago, this particular fox spirit and his grandfather were deeply in love.
That's fascinating.
It is. And when the grandfather passed away, she retreated from the human world. She explains to Wang that dropping this specific hairpin and having it fall specifically into the hands of her former lover's starving grandson is nothing short of heaven's math.
Heaven's math. I love that phrase.
Right. It is a preordained intersection of fate.
It's wild to think about, but it highlights something incredibly profound about how this narrative values human traits. Wang's integrity acts as a hidden, highly valuable currency.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, because yes, he is physically lazy. He is practically useless in the day-to-day 17th century agricultural economy. But his moral uprightness, his absolute refusal to steal even when his body is shutting down from starvation, is what triggers this massive supernatural bailout.
It creates a beautiful dichotomy. His fiscal inertia is contrasted sharply by his moral decisiveness.
Exactly.
If we view this through a modern entrepreneurial lens, it's as if his technical skills, his ability to execute a daily grind are totally non-existent.
Yeah.
But his core ethical foundation, his compliance and trustworthiness, is unshakable.
Right.
And in the universe of Liaozai, that ethical foundation is the strict prerequisite for accessing capital.
It's the ultimate background check. So Wang invites her back to his ruined home. And this leads us to the supernatural bailout and what I honestly think is one of the most incredible specific details in the entire text, the flour powder capital.
But before the capital injection, though, there is the audit.
Oh, right, the audit.
The Fox grandmother's inspection of his home is a masterclass in shame and tough love.
Oh, it is absolutely brutal. She walks into these crumbling rooms. She takes one look at Wang's wife, who is wearing ruined padded cotton that is literally falling apart at the seams.
Yeah.
And the text describes the wife as having a vegetable-colored complexion. Think about what that means biologically. She is visibly malnourished, green and gray around the gills from prolonged starvation and vitamin deficiency.
It's a grim picture.
And then the fox spirit looks at the stove in the kitchen. It's completely smokeless. No fire, no ash, no food, nothing.
The fox spirit's reaction is one of profound, centuries-deep disappointment. She sighs heavily and says, "Alas, to think the grandson of Wang Jianzi has become so poor." Right. She isn't just looking at a poor man. She is looking at the degradation of a bloodline she loved.
And the wife just breaks down. She is sobbing, detailing their absolute poverty to this magical being. So the fox spirit takes immediate, decisive action.
She does.
She hands the golden hairpin right back to the wife and tells her to go pawn it, not to invest, but just to buy enough rice and grain to survive for 3 days.
Triage.
Exactly. She leaves, but she promises to return. And when she comes back 3 days later, she brings actual silver to buy a massive amount of millet and wheat. She is triaging the situation. She is stabilizing the patient.
Yeah.
She provides immediate, necessary liquidity just to stop the bleeding. But she makes it very clear that this is a stopgap measure.
Right.
The very next day, she sits Wang down for a serious strategic conversation. She tells him point blank that lazy eating, just sitting around consuming resources without producing any value, is structurally unsustainable. She demands that he start a small business.
And Wang, leaning heavily on his cultivated helplessness, gives the classic universal excuse, "I don't have any capital," which is when she reveals the source of her funding. And this is where the text gets brilliantly, surprisingly
I
specific.
love this part.
She tells Wang that when his grandfather was alive, the gold and wealth flowed through the mansion like a spring. But because she was a fox spirit, a being operating outside the world, she had no actual use for human economics.
Right. She doesn't need to buy a house.
Exactly. She didn't buy estates or silk. But she did save her specific allowance, specifically her flour powder money.
Her cosmetic allowance from 100 years ago.
Yes. She saved 40 taels of gold that was originally earmarked for her makeup, and it has just been sitting untouched for a century.
We really need to contextualize what 40 taels of gold means for the listener. Because 40 taels sounds like, you could fit it in a coin purse. But what was the purchasing power of that in the 17th century?
It was astronomical. The economy of the Ming and Qing dynasties operated primarily on a silver standard. Silver was the everyday currency for large transactions, and copper coins were for small ones. Gold was exceedingly rare and incredibly valuable.
So how much are we talking?
40 taels of solid gold would be the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars today, perhaps even $1 million, depending on the specific era's inflation rate. It was enough to buy massive tracts of land, large estates, and essentially set a family up for life.
Wow. So what does this all mean? We have a magical being acting essentially like a highly demanding, extremely well-capitalized venture capitalist.
Yes.
I mean, think about the irony of this. You are funding a high-stakes commodity trading startup with century-old makeup money. It's hilarious, but it's also incredibly symbolic of the burdens of legacy.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this isn't just free magic money raining from the sky to solve his problems. This is legacy wealth in its purest form. It's the unspent, crystallized potential of his grandfather's golden era, preserved by the supernatural, and now being forcibly injected into his present reality. But because it is legacy wealth, it comes with immense expectations and extremely strict operational conditions.
Right, there are strings attached.
Heavy strings. The fox spirit isn't just handing him a bag of gold and saying, Good luck. She is heavily directing his business strategy.
She gives him highly specific, almost suspiciously accurate market advice. She orders him to take the 40 taels and buy jay.
JJ.
Right. Jay is a type of kudzu or grass cloth, a very breathable, lightweight textile. And she tells him he must rush to the capital, Yandu, immediately. She calculates the logistics, noting it should take him exactly 6 or 7 days to reach the capital.
And listen to the ominous, incredibly strict warning she gives him as he prepares to leave. She says, be diligent, not lazy. Be quick, not slow. 1 day late and you will regret it.
1 day late and you will regret it. It's like she has inside information on a corporate merger. She knows exactly when this specific market window is going to close.
She understands that in the world of commodities trading, particularly in an era before telecommunications, timing isn't just a factor, it is the only factor.
The only factor.
Right. By enforcing this strict deadline, she is actively trying to override his innate, deeply ingrained laziness with a sense of existential urgency. She is testing whether the massive capital injection can actually rewire his underlying behavioral patterns.
Well, spoiler alert for the listener, it absolutely does not.
Not even a little bit.
Which brings us to the market crash and the comedic tragedy of errors. Because Wang does what he's told initially. He takes the gold. He buys over 50 massive pieces of this grass cloth. He packs up his inventory, hits the road, and everything is actually going according to the business plan.
Until he hits weather.
Right. A rainstorm.
Literally just a rainstorm.
All rain. But the text notes something deeply psychological and critical about Wang's character. It says Wang has never experienced wind and frost.
This is a vital point. His poverty, up until now, was a domestic poverty.
Right.
It was suffered entirely indoors, lying in bed, arguing with his wife. He has never actually been out in the harsh physical reality of the world. He has never faced the elements.
Right. So now he's on the road carrying heavy inventory, and it starts to rain. His clothes get soaked, his shoes get heavy with mud, and he is completely, utterly demoralized.
He just shuts down.
He becomes physically drained and spiritually broken just by the sensation of getting wet. It's entirely outside his comfort zone.
So he retreats to an inn to rest and dry off. And the rain continues. The text describes it pouring all night, like ropes of water coming down from the eaves.
It's a great visual.
It is. And the next morning, the roads are deep, thick with mud. Wang stands at the doorway of the inn, looks out at the other travelers and merchants, trudging through the muck, sinking up to their shins, straining under their loads, and he's terrified.
Yeah.
He looks at the effort required, and he just thinks it looks too hard, so he waits.
He waits until noon, hoping the mud will magically dry up. But by the time he finally works up the nerve to pack his bags and leave, the dark clouds gather again and it starts pouring even harder.
Of course it does.
So what does he do? He stays another night. He is entirely paralyzed by the friction of reality.
And that psychological paralysis is exactly what makes his next decision so disastrous. This delay, this absolute inability to push through temporary physical discomfort is fatal to his enterprise.
Completely fatal.
Because as he finally nears the capital a day or two later, he starts hearing rumors from returning merchants that the price of grass cloth in Yandu is skyrocketing.
He hears this and he is thrilled. He thinks the Fox's plan is working flawlessly and he's about to make a fortune. But when he finally arrives at the capital and unpacks at a local guest house, the innkeeper there gives him the devastating, world-shattering news.
He missed the window.
He missed it by exactly 1 day, just like the fox warned. And we really need to understand why this market moved so aggressively.
The historical context here is fascinating. The southern route, the main supply line, had just opened up, but initial supplies were incredibly scarce.
Okay.
At the same time, the local prince's mansion, the text specifies a bail, which is a high-ranking Manchu prince, was buying up all the grass cloth they could find with extreme urgency.
Why did a prince need so much grass cloth so quickly?
Well, grass cloth is extremely breathable. In the intense summer heat of the capital, outfitting the thousands of officials, guards, and servants in the prince's retinue with lightweight summer uniforms was a massive, sudden procurement order.
That makes sense.
Right. The demand completely outstripped the supply, so prices had tripled overnight. But, and this is the crucial mechanism of the crash, the prince's purchasing quota was completely filled the exact day before Wang arrived.
It is the ultimate gut punch. The institutional buyer left the market.
Exactly. The whale exited, and the latecomers were left holding the bag.
Wow.
The innkeeper explains this to Wang, and Wang falls into a deep depression. But the mechanics of supply and demand dictate that it gets much worse.
Right, because more people are coming.
Exactly. Over the next few days, the roads clear up, and more delayed merchants arrive with their own shipments of grass cloth.
Right.
The supply suddenly floods a market that has zero demand, and the price absolutely plummets. It crashes below the original cost.
Here's where it gets really interesting and where I want you to think about your own financial decisions. Because Wang's reaction to this market crash is so universally human.
It really is.
He is holding all this heavy depreciating inventory, the price is dropping daily, and the innkeeper advises him to sell it cheap, cut his losses, preserve some capital, and pivot to a different business.
Sound advice.
Very sound. But Wang adamantly refuses. He tells the innkeeper he won't sell at a loss because there's no profit in it.
It is a textbook, pristine example of the sunk cost fallacy combined with loss aversion.
Yes. If you are listening to this, think about the last time you held onto a losing stock, or maybe a cryptocurrency that cratered. You bought at the peak of the bubble, it crashes.
Real.
Every financial advisor, every piece of logic tells you to sell, salvage 20% of your money, and move on. But you refuse because selling makes the loss real.
Exactly.
You hold on to the bag, convinced it will miraculously bounce back, all while your portfolio bleeds out.
Wang is mentally anchoring his expectations to the triple price he could have gotten if he hadn't avoided the mud, rather than reacting to the reality of the market that is actually in front of it.
Right.
And his inability to adapt to the new reality is compounded by the slow, relentless drain of his resources. He holds out in the capital for over 10 days.
10 days of in-fees.
Exactly. During that time, the daily cost of his food and boarding at the inn is eating directly into his remaining operating capital. His anxiety is compounding daily.
Finally, the financial pain becomes simply too much to bear. He caves, follows the innkeeper's advice way too late, and liquidates his entire inventory in a fire sale at a loss of over 10 taels. He's bleeding money. He is devastated. So he goes to sleep, planning to pack up and go home in the morning in absolute disgrace with what little capital he managed to salvage.
But then, the final disaster strikes.
Oh man, this part?
The universe isn't done stripping him down. He wakes up the next morning, checks his bag, and the remaining gold is gone, stolen in the middle of the night.
Wiped out, completely zeroed. He goes from a 40-tael venture-backed inheritance to absolute zero in a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
He frantically tells the innkeeper, who is deeply apologetic and at a total loss. Some people in the inn advise Wang to report the theft to the local magistrate and use the law to force the innkeeper to compensate him for the stolen funds.
But look at Wang's response to this advice. This is a crucial defining character moment.
It is.
Despite facing complete ruin, he sighs and says, "This is my fate." What does it have to do with the innkeeper? He completely refuses to drag an innocent man down with him just to recoup his own losses.
Once again, his physical and business ineptitude is balanced by this staggering moral clarity. The innkeeper is so deeply moved by Wang's grace under pressure, by his ethical restraint when he had every excuse to be ruthless, that he gifts Wang 5 taels of his own silver just so Wang can afford the journey home.
Which is an incredible act of charity and a direct return on the currency of Wang's integrity.
It is, but I have to push back here. I have to ask you, and this is something I've been wrestling with reading this text, why didn't the magic fox spirit protect his investment? I mean, she's a supernatural being of immense power. She knew the exact market conditions. Why let him fail so spectacularly? She could have magically dried the mud on the road or paralyzed the thief in the night. Why let him lose her century-old savings?
It's a phenomenal question, and it strikes at the core philosophy of the story.
Right.
If we view the fox spirit not just as a magical ATM, but as a deliberate architect of his personal development, we have to recognize the absolute necessity of his failure.
Necessity of it.
Exactly. Wang had to be completely, violently stripped of his grandfather's safety net. Think about it. As long as he was operating with the flour powder money, he was still relying on legacy wealth. He was playing with house money.
Right. He hadn't truly earned the stakes. The pain wasn't his.
Precisely. This catastrophic failure wasn't an accident. It was a necessary crucible. The supernatural intervention merely got him out of his ruined house and forced him into the arena.
But the arena is tough.
Very tough. The arena itself is unforgiving. To actually change, to burn away that deep-seated generational laziness, he needed to face the absolute abyss of total ruin, stripped of every single unearned advantage.
Which perfectly sets up the pivot, because surviving that complete destruction didn't just save him, it fundamentally rewired his relationship to risk.
It did.
We are moving into the second phase of Wang's journey, Rain, death, and the ultimate survivor. Wang is stranded in the capital. He is physically too ashamed to go home and face his wife and the fox spirit after blowing 100 years of savings.
You can't blame him.
No, he is pacing inside and outside the inn, caught in this agonizing valley of indecision.
And that's exactly when, with nothing left to lose, he begins to truly observe the local underground economy.
Right. He notices groups of people gathering on the street corners and in alleyways, completely engrossed in something. They were betting massive, life-changing sums of money on fighting quails.
Quails.
Quails. We are talking thousands of copper coins changing hands in minutes. He learns that a single, well-trained fighting quail sells for over 100 coins.
He is observing a completely different market ecosystem. He's moving from the elite, high society commodity trading of grass cloths meant for the prince's mansion down into the gritty, highly volatile, purely speculative street market of avian blood sports.
And his mind finally starts working like an entrepreneur. He calculates that the 5 taels of silver the innkeeper gave him out of pity is exactly enough capital to pivot and become a quail merchant.
A huge pivot.
Yeah. He pitches the idea to the innkeeper, who strongly encourages him and even offers to let him stay and eat for free at the inn while he sets the business up. So, Wang goes to the market, buys a massive, overflowing load of quails carrying dozens of cages on a shoulder pole, and heads back into the city to start selling.
And initially, the innkeeper is thrilled. He congratulates Wang on the purchase and tells him how quickly he's going to flip this inventory for a profit.
But then, the universe throws another curveball. The weather strikes again.
The second storm.
It rains. And I need you to picture this. It's not just a passing shower. It rains heavily through the night and straight into the dawn. The streets of the capital literally turn into rushing rivers.
Oh.
The downpour is relentless, pouring in thick sheets without stopping for hours, then days. Wang is trapped inside his small room at the inn. He physically cannot go out to the market to sell his birds. And the rain just continues.
And as the days drag on, the grim reality of his biological inventory sets in. He has an inventory of living, breathing creatures packed tightly together in small cages.
And we should explain the biology of quails here, because it's not arbitrary.
Right.
Quails are ground-dwelling birds. They are highly territorial, and when they are confined in tight spaces with limited resources and high stress, they become incredibly aggressive.
Exactly. This isn't just bad luck. It's natural behavior exacerbated by the environment. They are stressed by the confinement, the lack of light, the noise of the storm. Wang starts waking up to find quails dead in their cages.
He is terrified. He has no idea what to do. The next day, even more die.
It accelerates.
Yeah, the mass death accelerates exponentially until there are only a few birds left. Desperate to save what little inventory he has, Wang consolidates the few surviving birds into one single cage just to feed them more easily.
Which is a mistake.
A huge mistake. He goes to sleep hoping the storm will break. When he checks the consolidated cage the next morning, there's only one quail left alive.
Out of an entire massive shipment, out of all that capital, one single survivor remains surrounded by the bodies of the others.
Wang completely breaks down. The text says he is weeping openly. He goes to the innkeeper and tells him he is totally, irrevocably ruined. His money is gone, his inventory is dead, he can't go home, and he just wants to die right there in the inn.
This raises an important question, and it draws a brilliant, almost poetic thematic parallel in the text.
How so?
Well, look closely at the role of rain in Wang's life. Rain caused his first failure. It created the mud that delayed him, paralyzed his will, and destroyed his grass cloth business.
True.
And now, rain has caused his second apparent failure, trapping him indoors and seemingly killing off his entire quail inventory.
It's like the universe is just constantly throwing water at him to drown him out of the market.
It feels like a curse. But this is where the innkeeper provides a crucial paradigm-shifting perspective that completely changes the trajectory of the story.
Yes, the innkeeper is the real hero here.
He really is. The innkeeper comes over to Wang's room to look at the carnage and to see this one single remaining bird. He doesn't just glance at it, he studies it very carefully. He looks at its posture, its eyes, its beak.
He knows what he's looking for.
Right. And he turns to Wang and says, "This looks like a creature of extraordinary spirit. The death of all those other quails." It might not have been the weather at all. Given the confined space, it is very likely that this bird killed all the others.
Let that sink in. It wasn't the cold that killed them. It wasn't the stress. It was a massacre.
Exactly. The innkeeper realizes they aren't looking at a tragic, lucky survivor of a natural disaster. They are looking at an absolute apex predator, a natural-born champion.
Wow.
He tells Wang, since you have no other inventory and nothing else to do, you should train it. If it's truly as good a fighter as I think it is, you can make a living gambling with it.
It's such an incredible pivot. If you are listening, think about the analogy here. That single crowded cage was like a brutal gladiator arena.
A perfect analogy.
Or, to put it in modern business terms, a hyper-competitive, incredibly high-pressure startup incubator where only the most ruthless survive. The extreme suffocating pressure of being trapped in that room during the storm didn't actually destroy Wang's business.
Right.
It forcibly consolidated his scattered, low-margin, high-volume inventory and forged a singular, unbeatable, high-yield asset.
It's the ultimate distillation of value. Through sheer environmental pressure, he went from a fragile, volume-based business model selling hundreds of mediocre birds for a tiny margin to holding a single monopolistic asset with virtually unlimited upside.
Exactly.
But, and this is the key, he only arrived at that asset through the terrifying crucible of what looked, at first glance, like catastrophic loss.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the next most cinematic phase of our story, the high-stakes tournament and the art of negotiation. Because once Wang accepts that he doesn't have a tragedy, but rather a champion, everything about his posture changes.
He begins to intensely train the bird. He learns its rhythms, its diet, its triggers.
He becomes a coach.
Yes. And once the bird is domesticated and highly responsive to his commands, the innkeeper tells him it's time to test the asset.
Yeah.
He tells Wang to take it out to the street corners, to the casual gambling rings, to fight for food and drinks.
And the quail is an absolute monster. It is incredibly robust, fast, and aggressive. It wins every single street fight it enters.
Which builds his confidence.
Right. The innkeeper is thrilled, sees the potential, and actually lends Wang some working capital. He tells Wang to level up, go challenge the younger gentry and the rich kids who gamble in the nicer parts of the city.
Moving up market.
Exactly, Wang does. 3 battles, 3 decisive, brutal victories. Over the next 6 months of highly calculated street fighting, Wang accumulates 20 taels of silver.
He is rebuilding his wealth, but this time he is doing it slowly, methodically, and with his own hands. He is earning the capital.
And his relationship with this bird is intense. The text specifically notes that he treats the quail like his own life.
Yeah.
This bird isn't just an asset, it is his literal salvation from starvation. But street gambling, even against rich kids, is small time. The real defining test comes at the Lantern Festival, the Shenghuiyan Festival.
This is a major cultural event. This is where the local royalty gets directly involved in the street culture.
The Great Prince, the absolute highest authority in the region, is an avid quail fighting enthusiast. Every year at the Lantern Festival, he breaks down the social barriers.
He opens the gates.
Exactly. He opens up the massive courtyard of his mansion and invites the common people, the street gamblers, the merchants, the peasants, to bring their absolute best birds to fight his royal, carefully bred champions.
It's an open tournament, the ultimate proving ground where class doesn't matter, only the quality of the bird.
Right.
And before they go to the mansion, the innkeeper sits Wang down for a master class in high-stakes negotiation and emotional control.
Oh, the speech is so good.
It is. He tells Wang, today's the day you could become instantly generationally wealthy. But it all depends entirely on your fate and, more importantly, your discipline.
The innkeeper lays out a very specific, rigid protocol. He says, if your bird loses, we just pack up and walk away quietly. But if, by some miraculous 1 in a 10,000 chance, your bird beats the prince's champions, the prince will absolutely want to buy it from you. When he makes an offer, you must not agree. I don't care what he says. No matter how much he pressures you, no matter how much gold he flashes, you do not agree. You only look at me. You wait for my signal, and you only open your mouth to agree when I nod my head.
The innkeeper is essentially acting as his agent, his manager.
Yeah.
He is incredibly shrewd. He knows that Wang, having just intimately experienced the trauma of extreme poverty, the feeling of wet cattle garments, and literal starvation, will be incredibly vulnerable to a lowball offer.
Absolutely.
Especially when that offer comes from a terrifying figure of absolute authority like a prince. The innkeeper is trying to build a psychological wall to protect Wang from his own desperation.
Wang agrees. He looks the innkeeper in the eye and says, yes, I understand. I will wait for your nod. So they go to the prince's mansion. And the scene the author paints is deeply cinematic.
Really sets the mood.
It does. The massive courtyard is packed shoulder to shoulder with quail fighters, spectators, and guards. The prince comes out, draped in silk, takes his elevated seat in the hall, and his attendants shout into the crowd, "Anyone who wishes to fight, come forward."
A confident challenger steps up immediately. The prince orders his bird released, the challenger releases his, and the fight is over in seconds.
That fast?
Yet with just a brief flutter and a targeted leap, the challenger's bird is completely defeated and runs away. The prince laughs uproariously. A few more challengers step up with their prize street birds, and they are all quickly, almost casually dispatched by the royal quails.
The prince's birds are elite, bred for violence. The innkeeper nudges Wang in the ribs and whispers, "Now is the time."
Here we go.
They step forward out of the crowd. The prince leans forward, looks at Wang's bird, and immediately recognizes its quality. He's an expert. He points at the angry veins bulging in its eyes and notes the incredibly strong, thick feathers.
He knows what he's looking at.
Yeah. He turns to his handlers and says, "Do not underestimate this one." He orders them to bring out a specific bird known as the iron-beaked quail to fight it.
The iron-beaked quail sounds incredibly formidable, likely a bird that has killed before.
Oh, definitely.
But it only takes one or two leaps before Wang's bird utterly destroys it, tearing at it and sending it fleeing across the courtyard with broken feathers.
The prince is genuinely shocked. He sits up straight. He orders another elite bird brought out from his reserves. It fights, and it loses just as fast.
Wow.
He brings out another. It loses. Wang's bird is just systematically tearing through the royal roster. Finally, the prince has had enough of being humiliated in his own courtyard. He calls for his ultimate weapon, the jade quail, from deep within the inner palace.
The description of this specific bird elevates the story from a gritty street narrative into the realm of myth.
Yes. It is brought out in a special cage, and it is stunning. It has pure white feathers like an egret or a swan.
Beautiful.
It is described as having a divine or supernatural swiftness. It doesn't even look like a normal earthly bird.
And when Wang sees this legendary white quail, his courage completely evaporates. The trauma response kicks in.
He panics.
Completely. He drops to his knees on the stone courtyard and begs the prince to call off the fight. He pleads, "Your Highness's quail is a divine creature. I am terrified it will kill my bird, and if my bird dies, I lose my only source of livelihood."
He is terrified of losing his one cash-flowing asset. But the prince laughs at him and says, "Release it. Don't be a coward. If your bird dies in combat against the jade quail, I will compensate you handsomely."
So Wang has no choice. He is compelled by royalty. He releases his champion.
And the fight is amazing.
Oh, the combat dynamics described in the text here are just brilliant. As the legendary massive white jade quail charges forward with supernatural speed, Wang's bird doesn't rush out to meet it. Instead, it crouches down low to the ground, pulling its energy inward, waiting like an angry chicken.
It's absorbing the momentum, and when the jade quail strikes down with its powerful beak, Wang's bird suddenly erupts upward, launching a vicious counterattack like a soaring crane.
What an image.
It's an incredible visual. The grounded, gritty, mud-forged street fighter exploding upward against the elegant, divine, palace-bred champion.
The physics of the fight favor the street bird's lower center of gravity. They fight fiercely, advancing, retreating, soaring, and diving. They are locked in a blur of feathers and claws for the time it takes to brew a pot of tea.
That's a long fight for a bird.
It is. And slowly, the pampered jade quail begins to tire. Its movements get sloppy. But Wang's bird, forged in that horrific inn-room, only gets angrier. Its attacks become more furious, more rapid, more desperate.
Until finally, the pristine, snow-white feathers of the jade quail are ripped out and scattered across the courtyard stones. The royal champion drops its wings in total defeat and literally runs away to hide.
The crowd of over 1,000 spectators falls completely silent, and then they start gasping in admiration. A peasant's bird just dethroned the prince's mythic champion.
The prince is amazed. He steps down, asks to hold Wang's bird. He examines it carefully from its beak down to its claws, marveling at the muscle density. And then he looks at Wang and asks the million-dollar question. Is this quail for sale?
And here begins the psychological negotiation that the innkeeper warned him about.
Right.
Wang initially plays hard to get, stating very respectfully that he has no other property and depends entirely on this bird for his daily life. But the prince counters by promising him enough money to buy a comfortable middle-class estate.
Wang pretends to think about it for a long time, looking at the ground. Then he looks up and boldly states his price, 1,000 taels of gold.
1,000. The prince actually scoffs out loud. He says, "You foolish man, what kind of rare mythic jewel do you think this is?" He asked for 1,000 gold.
But Wang has a brilliant, deeply grounded counterargument ready. He says, "Your Highness might not consider it a treasure, but to me it is worth far more than a priceless jewel. I take this bird to the market, and every single day it earns me enough silver to buy grain. It keeps my family of over 10 people from freezing in the winter or starving in the summer. What dead jewel could possibly compare to that living value?"
He is eloquently arguing the concept of utility value over intrinsic value.
Exact.
To a prince, whose basic needs are infinitely met, a jewel is just a shiny object of status. But to a poor man who has known starvation, a reliably cash-flowing asset is the ultimate irreplaceable treasure. It's a very sophisticated economic argument coming from a man who used to sleep in cattle garments.
The prince respects the logic. He sees he isn't dealing with an idiot. He says, "Fair point. I won't shortchange you. I'll give you 200 gold.
Wang shakes his head. The prince adds another 100, 300 gold.
Wang looks over at the innkeeper in the crowd. The innkeeper's face is completely blank. He doesn't move a single muscle, no nod.
So Wang swallows his fear and holds his ground. He says, "By your command, I will lower the price by 100. 900 gold.
The prince gets annoyed. He says, "Forget it. Who in their right mind would pay 900 gold for a quail?" And Wang, remarkably, literally puts the bird back in his carrying bag, bows, and turns his back to walk away.
The classic ultimate negotiation maneuver, the willingness to walk away.
And it works. The prince watches him take a few steps and then calls out, "Quail man, come back. I will give you 600 gold. That is my final offer. Take it or leave it."
And this is the breaking point. This is the climax of the psychological tension in the story. Wang turns back, and he looks at the innkeeper one more time.
And the innkeeper is still stone-faced. No nod.
None.
He is telling Wang to hold the line, push for more. But the text tells us exactly what is happening inside Wang's head in that split second. At the prospect of 600 gold, an unimaginable sum, his heart is overflowing with desire.
Yeah.
The sheer magnitude of that wealth triggers a profound panic in him. He is terrified of losing the deal, of the prince changing his mind and confiscating the bird for nothing.
His trauma of extreme poverty, the memory of his starving, green-faced wife, violently overpowers the strategic discipline the innkeeper tried to instill in him.
So he caves. He drops his gaze and says, "I am not happy with this price, but if I walk away now, I fear I will offend you deeply. I will accept your command."
He took the deal.
He took it. The prince is delighted, orders his treasurers to weigh out the 600 gold immediately, hands it over, and Wang bows and leaves the courtyard a phenomenally rich man.
And as soon as they're outside the gates, the innkeeper is absolutely furious.
Oh, he lets him have it.
He scolds Wang right in the street. He says, "What did I tell you? Why were you in such a rush to sell yourself short? If you had just held out a little longer, held your nerve, 800 gold was sitting right in the palm of your hand."
Which is such a fascinating moment to pause on. I want to ask you, the listener, to really think about this scenario. Put yourself in Wang's mud-stained shoes.
Yeah, what would you do?
Right. Was Wang right to secure the life-changing guarantee of 600 gold? Or was he a fool for leaving 200 gold on the table because he let fear override his mentor's instructions? On one hand, he secured generational wealth. He won the game. On the other, he let his fear dictate the final term.
It perfectly highlights the psychological difference between merely surviving and actively optimizing.
Tell me more about that.
Well, the innkeeper, who operates a business and isn't burdened by the acute trauma of literal starvation, has the emotional distance to optimize the negotiation to its absolute mathematical peak.
He's not attached.
Exactly. Wang, however, who intimately remembers sleeping under cattle garments and watching his grandfather's legacy rot, optimizes purely for survival. He takes the guaranteed life-altering exit because the risk of returning to zero is psychologically unbearable.
It's a deeply, understandably human flaw. He isn't perfect, he lacked total discipline, but he still won. Which leads us to the final fascinating section, the irony of diligence and the author's verdict.
Upon returning to the inn, Wang tries to tip the innkeeper a generous portion of the gold to thank him for his guidance and the initial 5 taels.
That's nice of him.
But the innkeeper ethically refuses to take a percentage of the sale. He only accepts payment for the literal cost of the food and lodging Wang consumed over the past 6 months. It's a wonderful echo of Wang's own integrity from the very beginning of the story when he returned the hairpin.
Good karma returning. So Wang packs his gold and travels home. He arrives, walks into his crumbling house, tells his wife and the fox grandmother the whole incredible, harrowing story, and dumps 600 taels of gold onto the broken table.
Amazing.
The fox spirit, true to her nature as a legacy manager, immediately takes charge of the capital allocation. She orders Wang to purchase 300 males of prime, fertile farmland.
To contextualize that, 300 males of roughly 50 acres of highly productive agricultural land. In the 17th century agrarian economy, owning that much prime land makes you a major regional landlord.
You're set for life.
Exactly. It provides massive, perpetual passive income through tenant farming and crop yields. They build a grand, sweeping house, buy exquisite furniture, and suddenly, almost overnight, they are a prominent, elite family again. The legacy is restored.
But the fox grandmother doesn't stop there, and this is where the story brilliantly subverts all of our expectations about happily ever after.
Oh, she gets strict.
Very strict. She doesn't let them just lounge around their new mansion. She violently enforces discipline. She forces Wang to wake up before dawn every single day to personally supervise the farm laborers in the fields. She forces his wife to constantly supervise the household staff in the weaving of cloth.
And if they slack off even a little bit, if Wang tries to sleep until the sun is 3 poles high like he used to, the text says the fox spirit fiercely scolds them.
No more late morning.
None. She becomes a strict, terrifying, unyielding taskmaster. And Wang and his wife, perhaps profoundly humbled by their brutal journey and the realization of how easily wealth can vanish, accept this harsh discipline without a single word of complaint.
They endure 3 years of forced, grueling daily diligence under her watchful eye. And after 3 years, their wealth hasn't just stabilized, it has multiplied massively. The estate is a thriving, highly efficient enterprise.
It's a well-oiled machine.
Exactly. Only then, having definitively secured their operational discipline and proven they won't lose the wealth again, does the fox spirit announce she is leaving forever to return to her spiritual cultivation.
Wang and his wife beg her to stay, weeping, holding onto her robes. But the next morning, she is simply gone. Her mission to restore her lover's bloodline is complete.
Oh.
Which brings us to the formal commentary from the historian of the strange, the author of the text, Pu Songling himself. He traditionally appends a little philosophical verdict at the end of his stories to guide the reader.
And his commentary focuses entirely on the central glaring paradox of the story. He writes that wealth and honor are almost universally obtained through immense diligence and hard work. But in this singular, bizarre case, he notes, wealth was obtained through laziness.
Pu Songling literally writes, "This alone was obtained through laziness." A truly unprecedented thing to hear.
Yeah.
But then he clarifies exactly why heaven allowed this anomaly to occur. He says it was because Wang was poor to the bone, but his true nature never shifted.
And hairpin.
Exactly. His absolute, unwavering integrity regarding the lost hairpin was why heaven initially abandoned him to poverty, to test him, but ultimately pitied and saved him.
The author asks rhetorically, can there truly be wealth and honor found in laziness? Implying heavily that Wang is a miraculous, once-in-a-century exception based entirely on his unshakable moral character.
It's a comforting thought for the reader.